Second Kings. This will be our first study. We're going to actually be in chapter 9, verses 1 through 37. And we'll title this one Parallels Between DOGE and Jehu. Now, DOGE, obviously, those of you who've been following current events, stands for the Department of Government Efficiency, which Elon Musk is currently running to try to find out where our government's been wasting money, where there's corruption, where there's fraud. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's amazing. It's amazing that, that all of these things are being uncovered. And we have the Democrat Party all up in arms saying, oh, they shouldn't be able to audit our government. Well, why would they be saying those things? Because if you're a crook or you're a criminal, you don't want people to see what you're doing, right? Okay, so after years of corruption, here's our official introduction. After years of corruption in ancient Israel, God chose a brave and determined man named Jehu to get rid of Israel's corrupt leadership. And you fast forward to modern times, like I said, we got Donald Trump and Elon Musk doing a very similar thing, getting rid of corruption within our government today. So let's begin. 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 1, and it reads, And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets and said unto him, Gird up thy loins and take this box of oil in thine hand, or like a flask of oil, and go to Ramoth Gilead. Go to Ramoth Gilead. Now, Elisha, obviously, like it says here, was the prophet of the time. Elijah is gone. He was taken up into heaven. And Elisha calls one of the younger prophets in training, if you would, to go on a mission. Verse 2, And when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him arise up from among his brethren and carry him to an inner chamber. I want you to go find this Jehu guy and take him aside separately and have a private meeting with him in an inner chamber. Then, verse 3, then take the box of oil and pour it on his head and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door and flee and tarry not. All right. Open the door. So he's going to go in there and he's going to anoint this guy king of Israel, this Jehu guy. And then this young prophet in training, if you would. And then he's supposed to just get out of there as fast as he can. Shut the door and run. Now, why would he have to do that? Well, think of this. There was a king over Israel at this time. His name was Joram. He was a son of Ahab. Another one of his names was Jehoram, just a longer version of that name. So there was a king of Israel, a descendant of Ahab already, but now the prophet is going to anoint a new king. Why? Well, having read the early chapters or the later chapters in 1 Kings and the early chapters in 2 Kings, we know that the house of Ahab and Jezebel was a corrupt house, and they led Israel deep into pagan idolatry and all kinds of other forms of wickedness. Verse 4, So the young man, the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. It is interesting, if you want to make a note of it, 1 Kings chapter 19, starting at about verse 16. Elijah was given a mission to anoint a new king over Tyre, okay, a king over another nation. And he was going to anoint this Jehu guy being king, okay? And after that, he was going to anoint a new prophet in his place named Elisha. And all three of these people, did I say king of Tyre? Yep. The king of, you guys should know, the king of Syria. Yeah, good. Thanks for correcting me. The king of Syria, these are three people that Elijah was going to anoint before he was going to be taken into heaven. The king of Syria, a new king of Syria, a new king of Israel, and, which actually Elisha is going to do in his stead, and he would anoint the new Elisha, the prophet. Okay, you're supposed to help me out. You guys are just watching me stumble on my words there. Okay, so these three anointed ones had a prophetic duty to destroy a group of wicked people that God wanted destroyed, a group of people that God had deemed for judgment, set aside for judgment. In fact, I'll just read it right here. You guys won't have it on the screen, so but I have it here in my notes. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 16, it says, "And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abem Meholah, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room, and it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall," that was the new king of Syria, "shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees have not bowed the knee to Baal," and so forth. And so now we come to Jehu, the man that would bring judgment upon the wicked. Verse 5, 2 Kings chapter 9. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, "I have an errand to thee, O captain." And Jehu said, "Unto which of us?" And he said, "To thee, O captain." This is this young prophet. He says, I have a mission. And then Jehu asks him, "Who?" And he says, "You." And he says, "Okay." And he arose and went into the house, verse 6, and he poured the oil on his head and said unto him, "Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. And thou," verse 7, "and thou shalt smite." These are God's words. This is the mission of Jehu. Pay attention closely so you can try to see what's happening in our world today. "And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel." The hand of Jezebel. So what we see here is the reason this judgment is going to come upon Ahab and his house was because Ahab and Jezebel not only corrupted Israel in a tragic way, but they murdered God's prophets. Verse 8. Now, you could go back. I'll just talk a little bit about this. If you want to liken this to today, Ahab and Jezebel represent all of the forces that we face today in this world that are anti-Christian, okay? That are trying to remove Christianity from America. And they were pretty successful at eliminating Christianity from America in many different ways. I'm talking about the prior administrations, the Democrat Party in particular. Okay, I'm not saying all Republicans are godly saints by any means, but the Democrat Party has become the anti-Christian party of our day. They are the party of Ahabs and Jezebels. They are the party that promotes paganism and sexual immorality and depravity to the point where they're praising people who defy nature, God's natural order of marriage being between a man and a woman, and even down to the point where they're mutilating, they're praising people who want to mutilate young kids' bodies, right? They want to mutilate little boys and little girls and call it gender identity, okay? All they're doing is literally destroying their reproductive organs and confusing these little children for the rest of their life. How low can you possibly get? A party that can't even differentiate between a biological male and a biological female. When you get to that state of degradation where you can't even define the difference between a man and a woman, you are a sick, twisted individual indeed. You have lost all moral authority. You have lost all common sense. You have lost all your dignity. No one should ever respect you because you're evil. Okay? You are evil and confused. You are a wicked person if you go along with that kind of nonsense, destroying the lives of little children and saying that people get to choose their gender based off of their feelings. Are you kidding me? Okay? Doesn't get any worse than that. Well, it looks like things are flipping the other way right now, doesn't it? As President Trump has now banned transgenderism in the Army, from what I heard from one of his executive orders, if I'm not mistaken. DEI from the military, DEI scrubbed out of government now. There's some cleaning house happening. Whether you think it is a legitimate thing or some kind of a grand deception, and I'm not mocking that, okay? Don't want people to say I'm mocking that. It's happening. You have to acknowledge that it's happening. And I want everybody to see here is this Jehu guy who's going to do it is not going to be a perfect guy. In fact, we're going to see it. We're going to cover it. I don't know if it'll be this week or next week, probably next week, or next study, whenever that'll be. We're going to see that Jehu had his own. God may have used them to destroy a large segment of the evildoers that were corrupting Israel's nation, ancient Israel's nation. But Jehu had his own form of idolatry that he didn't see or recognize or even try to get rid of, and God later calls that out. Okay, so just because somebody is doing really good stuff, whether it's me, you, the President of the United States, it doesn't automatically paint us as a perfect 100% saint of God who can never do any wrong. But at the same time, because of our sins, right? Because we all are sinners, we don't necessarily deserve, and I'm not saying this applies to everybody because you got to be a watchman, right? We don't necessarily deserve other people to look at us and say, well, look, Pastor Ben, he did that. He teaches the Bible and he tries to do it line by line, but man, he's really a wicked bastard when he comes to this or whatever. I hope I'm not, but let's just say I am, right? Therefore, he is trying to trick us. He's an absolute imposter. He's leading us astray. Now, I would feel that would be very unfair, right? For somebody to look at the part of me that's really bad and then say that all the good that I'm trying to do is all fake, right? So we don't want to do that to people. We can't expect perfection, right? Can't expect perfection. All right. And Jehu is an example of that. That's why I'm talking about that. We can't say, we're going to see here, God actually anointed Jehu. You're looking at me like, he's talking longer. Here he goes. I want to get to the next verse. This is good. Okay. I'm teasing you. So now I just lost my train of thought. But Jehu, I'm back now. Jehu was anointed by God to do a specific mission. And that was to get rid of a whole bunch of wicked Baal worshipers, Ahab, Jezebel. But Jehu, as we're going to find out, was still an idolater. But it doesn't mean that everything he did on the side, working for God, it didn't mean that was all fake or that was all a ploy to deceive God's people. Okay. It was just that he had a blind side to the form of idolatry that he liked, but he really understood the wickedness of the idolatry of Ahab and Jezebel and was full-hearted. He was zealous to cleanse Israel of their idolatries. Verse 7. And I'll say that, I'm going to keep going here. We can sometimes be like that as Christians. Sometimes it's really easy to be on the offensive attack against people who are, let's just say the LGBTQs, right? We know that's evil. It opposes God's law at every level, right? But then there could be other forms of idolatry in our life that we excuse. We don't all the time. Sometimes we might hide those forms of idolatry and make excuses for it while we see the real obvious idolatries and combat that with our whole heart. What we want to make sure we do is be more like David than Jehu. Okay? David was a man after God's own heart. David wasn't just zealous when it came to getting rid of the sons of Belial, the sons of Satan, the wicked people in his country. He also asked God to cleanse him of any evil thoughts that he had, desires that he had. He made so many prayers in the book of Psalms. Lord, please cleanse my heart. Make my heart right. You don't see that with Jehu. He says, Lord, give me the power to whack those evildoers to hell, right? I'll take their heads off and send those bastards to hell. That was Jehu. David did both, right? We want to be more like David. All right. So I'm going to reread verse 7 if I hadn't read it yet. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. We know Jezebel, that wicked woman, right? Verse 8. Verse 8. If we can get there. There we go. I went past. Verse 8. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. Man, God can get pretty vulgar at times, by the way, guys. He can get pretty vulgar, and sometimes it's a way to make a point. So this is a message to all those people that, really can never talk rough or tough. It's always got to be soft and feminine. It's not that way, okay? God sometimes calls people a pile of dung, okay? But in the Hebrew, I'm sure it was probably more like our slang word for dung, okay? It probably starts with an SH, a pile of SH. That's kind of how God talks in a lot of these ways. And here he says, I want you to destroy from Ahab everyone that pisses against the wall. That's a nice way of saying all the males. Okay, it's not really a nice way of saying it. It's a vulgar way of saying it, right? Okay, I'm teasing a little bit here. I'm making excuses so when my family hears me talk vulgar once in a while, I can say, hey, God does it sometimes, so just be patient with me, okay? Too much fun. I didn't hear that. I'll get that afterwards. All right. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah. And that means utter extinction of their family lines. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. So this is the mission. Man, imagine if God came to you and said, hey, this is your mission. You're going to go, I'm just anointing you. You're going to be king, and you're going to go clean house. You're going to destroy all these people. You're going to kill every one of Ahab's descendants that pisses against the wall. And then you're going to take care of this Jezebel woman, and the dogs are going to lick her blood. All right? Then Jehu came forth to the servants of the Lord and said unto him, is all well? Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? Because the prophets are always called mad fellows by normal people, right? And he said unto them, I was teasing when I said normal people. Normal people. You know the man and his communication. So, there we go. So they asked Jehu, they said, what did that mad fellow tell you? It was that young prophet. And then Jehu just says, well, you know the man and his communication. But then he's going to go on and say, and they said, it is false. Tell us now. And he said, thus and thus spake he to me, saying, thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. That's a pretty big deal when there's already a king. Verse 13, then they hasted and took every man his garment and put it under him on the top of the stairs and blew with the trumpet, saying, Jehu is king, proclaiming him the new king. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Okay, now Joram was a son of Ahab. Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael, king of Syria. Now, if you remember Ahab, what God promised Ahab he was going to destroy him, but then Ahab repented. Do you guys remember that? And then God said, okay, even though Ahab was a very wicked man, he humbled himself before me. He repented. So I'm not going to bring this curse upon him in his lifetime. I'm going to bring it upon his sons. And that's what's happening. Verse 15, because his sons evidently never repented. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians, remember the Syrians? The king of Syria was the first one to start taking out the evildoers. When he fought with Hazael, king of Syria, that was the man whom Elijah anointed to be the new king over Syria. And Jehu said, if it be your minds, then let none go forth nor escape out of the city to go and tell it in Jezreel. Verse 16. If we can, there we go. Verse 16. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, was come down to see Joram. Now they were actually related. Ahaziah and Joram, they were both descendants of Ahab. Remember, both the king of Israel and the king of Judah were descendants of Ahab because the king of Judah had intermarried with the house of Ahab. Verse 17, and there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel and spied the company of Jehu as he came and said, I see a company. And Joram said, take an horseman and send to meet them, and let him say, is it peace? So there's a watchman. They see Jehu coming. They see Jehu coming. And and they send somebody out to say, hey, are you coming for peace or what's going on here? So they want to know, right? So there went one on horseback to meet him and said, thus saith the king, is it peace? And Jehu said, now pay attention to this, I love this. And Jehu said, what hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, the messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. But he cometh not again. So anyways, so what you see here is these messengers that are sent, they're going out there, but they're actually, it looks like they're joining Jehu. Once Jehu says, you think I'm really coming for peace? I'm not coming for peace. Okay, well, we're going to join you. Verse 19, then he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them and said, thus saith the king, is it peace? And Jehu answered, what hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee beside me. Verse 20, and the watchman told, saying, he came even unto them, and cometh not again. And the driving, I want you to pay attention, and the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. Evidently here, Jehu had a reputation of being a rough and tough dude. Because they're like, we don't know who that is. And what was it? Was it the watchman said that? Yeah, the watchman said, man, this whoever's driving this is driving it very intense, like Jehu. This looks like this must be Jehu by the way he's pounding these chariots, with such speed. Who else do we know in our time that has a reputation for moving with speed? Courageously moving against his enemies at lightning speed. Yeah, Donald Trump. Okay. If you're ever to see, I think there's two characters in the Bible that remind me of Trump, and that would be Samson and Jehu. Probably more so Jehu than Samson. Okay. And no, we were living in a time, Israel was living under Ahab and Jezebel. And like I said, Ahab and Jezebel could be all this corrupt establishment, right? Corrupt establishment doesn't just mean two leaders. It's a corrupt establishment led by the Baal worshipers, okay? The New World Order beast worshipers in our time. And so his job was to turn that upside down, to totally get rid of those people. And no doubt God picked him because he was a very driven man. He was very driven to accomplish things, to get the victory. And he was not afraid of anybody, as we're going to see. He was not afraid of anybody. And you might want to look at that side of Jehu and copy that as a Christian. And Joram said, this is the king here, make ready, the king of Israel at that time, that is technically, spiritually no longer the king because another was anointed, this Jehu. Make ready. And the chariot was made ready, and Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot. And they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth, the Jezreelite. Oh, they met him right in the place where Ahab and Jezebel conspired to commit murder, to steal a private citizen's private property, his vineyard. And it came to pass, when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, what peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many. Oh boy, do I love this character, man. effeminate, disgusting politicians coming up to him. Is it peace? Is it peace? Is it peace, Jehu? And he says, what peace? Do you think there's going to be any peace as long as the whoredoms of your mother is around and her witchcrafts? I like that. Instead of just saying no, he answers it like that. That is a studly answer, my friends. I love this Jehu in this respect. He was a stud. He was a man. He didn't get deceived by Jezebel's witchcrafts and her charms and her whoredoms. He called them out. He was disgusted by them. He was absolutely disgusted by Ahab and Jezebel. And that's what drove him to do what he's doing, in addition to being anointed by God to do this. And Joram turned his hands and fled. So he's got the king of Israel running from him and said to Ahaziah, there is treachery, O Ahaziah. So now the king of Judah and Israel are pretty much wetting their pants as Jehu comes after them, saying, there's no peace between us. Verse 24, and Jehu drew a bow with his full strength and smote Joram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. Just took out the king of Israel. Then said Jehu to his Bidkar his captain, take up and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth, the Jezreelite. Is that a befitting punishment? Right? Putting his dead body into the field of Naboth, who was murdered by Jezebel, so that Ahab, his grandpa, could have as a possession. All right, this is where the big sin happened, and now he's paying the price for that wicked deed. Okay, for remember how that when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Remember, God said he was going to punish them because of that. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons. Ooh, saith the Lord, and I will requite thee in this plat or lot, this piece of land, saith the Lord. Now therefore take and cast him into the plat or the lot of ground according to the word of the Lord. Verse 27, now when Ahaziah, the king of Judah, saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house. He's got them all on the run. And Jehu followed after him and said, smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Iblim. And he fled to Megiddo and died there. So Ahaziah, again, was a blood relative of Ahab. Ahab was his grandfather, the king of Judah here, therefore making him liable under the judgment that was pronounced upon Ahab and his descendants by Almighty God. Verse 28, and his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, began Ahaziah to reign over Judah. Verse 32, and when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face and tired her head and looked out at a window. I'm just going to make sure I got full juice here. So now the beautiful part's coming is Jehu is coming after Jezebel. Jezebel's still alive. Ahab's dead. Jezebel's still alive, working her wonders. So she evidently thinks that she hears that Jehu's coming, so she paints her face. She tries to look really good for Jehu. Maybe I can throw my charms at him, seduce him, and he won't harm me. I'll start acting all innocent, like, like, oh, Jehu, you're just such a man, and is that going to work? She's looking out the window. All right, verse 31. And Jehu entered in at the gate and said, and as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, had Zimri peace who slew his master? Now, Zimri, we remember back in 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 9 through 12. He was a man that murdered the king of Israel. He was a conspirator, but he was not a conspirator, as far as I remember, that God actually sanctioned, right? God didn't tell this Zimri guy, he didn't tell him to go and kill this guy because of his sins and the judgment that I'm going to bring upon him and his household. That guy just did that. That's a big difference. Is Jehu had a direct anointing by God to do the things that he was doing. But, and this guy, this Zimri guy that killed one of the earlier kings of Israel, ended up only reigning for a short time, and then he died. So she's trying to sweetly threaten him, trying to intimidate him in a kind, gentle way, not a kind, gentle way, but in a soft way, like, Jehu, you don't want to do this, because do you remember what happened to Zimri when he did that? It didn't go well for him. He ended up having a short reign and died. She's trying to protect her life, right? Verse 32. And he lifted up. Men, this is how you react to Jezebels, okay? This is how you react to Jezebels, trying to charm you away from doing God's work, trying to get you to join the evil side, whether that, many different ways this can happen. This could be somebody in your church, somebody in an organization, somebody, there's types of Jezebels everywhere. We know that from the book of Revelation. In the early church, Jesus said, there's this Jezebel in this church deceiving you guys. If you don't get away from her, you're going to suffer a very painful death with her. So get away from her. She was a false prophet. Okay. Verse 32, and he lifted up his face to the window and said, who is on my side? Who? And there looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. He didn't even reply to her, right? And he said, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trode her underfoot. And he trode her underfoot. Look at this. He didn't give in to her charm. He commanded those other men who said they were on his side. You're going to see this with Jehu later on. If you say you're on his side or on the side of the Lord, he's going to make you prove it. And he's going to make you prove it by you having to do some of the work yourself. We have a leader right now, Donald Trump, right? What does he do when he goes over to other countries that say, oh yeah, we're your ally, we're your ally. Yeah, we don't, what does he do? He makes them take, for instance, Canada, Mexico. Trump has told them that we're going to cut off aid from you. We're going to do this and that. We're going to make you our 51st state. We're going to do all this to you unless you stop these illegal immigrants and these drugs from getting into our country. You're going to do it if you're on our side. Otherwise, you're not on our side. And what have they done? Oh, yes, yes, sir. We'll do it. We'll send one country said, we'll even send our presidential plane to go get these guys from your country and bring them back home. Do you guys see that? That kind of courage. Do you think these eunuchs up here in the window, when they could just feel the courage and the strength from Jehu, do you think prior to this, do you think they were absolutely frightened of Jezebel? You better believe they were frightened of Jezebel. Elijah was frightened by Jezebel. Okay, if you remember he ran away when she said to Elijah, I'm going to have your life by tomorrow at this time because of what you did to the Baal prophets. Huge difference here between Elijah and Jehu. Elijah was afraid of women, evil women. Jehu could care less. All right, Jehu just looks up there and says, who's on my side? And they just throw her down. So those eunuchs gained courage as they saw the masculine strength of this man come in there and just command what was to be done. And some would say this is pretty harsh, right? I mean, this is pretty harsh, but you think about all the harsh things Jezebel had done in her time. I mean, he literally takes his chariot. I almost laugh at some of these biblical characters, man. He takes his, after they throw her out the window, her blood is splattered everywhere. He takes his chariot and rides over her to finish the whole thing off. Okay. So, I mean, somebody, if they think that Trump is a little too harsh, I mean, he's not taking his chariot and running over the prior Jezebels that were running our country. So, verse 34, and when he was come in, he did eat, and hey, no big deal. Now it's time to eat and drink. Business was accomplished. Just got rid of Jezebel. Doesn't have a sick stomach because of it or anything. He's just, all right. And when he came in, he did eat and drink and said, go, see now this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Why would those things be left? Her skull, the palms of her hand and her feet. Remember, the dogs came in and licked it all up, and she fell out the window. She got trampled over by Jehu's chariot. Her body was demolished, and the dogs came in and ate everything but her skull, her palms, the palms of her hands and her feet. Why? Her deeds were so wicked, that the dogs wouldn't eat her head, her hands, and her feet. Those things that symbolize somebody's evil actions, right? The mind that conspires evil, the hands and feet that carry out the actions. Her hands and her feet and her mind were so wicked that the dogs wouldn't even eat it. Verse 36. Wherefore they came again and told him and said, this is the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, this prophecy, in other words, what they're saying is this prophecy came to pass, saying, in the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel. Now, let me just tie something else into this. Jezebel also represents something else that I have failed to bring up at this point. Jezebel, the harlot church of our days. The apostate churches that surround us everywhere, seducing people to come into the churches, but never teaching them the word of God, but instead teach them all kinds of false doctrines that lead our people astray, that lead them into spiritual fornication with idols. Okay? And I'll say this. Most of the churches that you go into, of the mainstream churches, what I've seen is some guy just go up there and tell stories and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's usually a leftist political doctrine disguised as the gospel. Most often, that's what you'll see. And what you'll see is sometimes they'll throw bones in their sermons. They'll throw bones to the men in there that are, lean more conservative, right? And they feel like they got a few bones here and there. But at the end of the day, it's always the few bones that they throw out that sound conservative are way down here, and all the leftist, effeminate political crap that they throw at their congregants week after week is up here. I've seen it at a local church over here. Literally, I go over there and just want to go visit it's the 4th of July weekend. We're going to go visit a church, right? And the pastor goes up there and covertly, and I'm smart enough, I know, because I put together sermons, I know what he's doing. He covertly does an anti-American sermon on the 4th of July. And then, in other sermons, praises Black Lives Matter, peddles white guilt to the good citizens, the good Christian families that live here in our city, in Princeton, have to go there and be fed that crap. Okay? That bothers me a lot. And the thing that bothers me even more is there are so many good people that sit in these pews that want the truth, and they're getting that crap. They're getting Jezebel. They're getting the effeminate. Jezebel represents feminine rule over man. Well, the church has become effeminate. There's no masculinity left in our church today. The feminine rules, and they're leading the men and the families into all kinds of idolatries, to the point now where many churches are, you see them now, the rainbow churches, right? Open doors all. They'll have the 5 doors out there or whatever it is, and says, we love you, just come in, and we're accepting. This is a friendly, safe space for any of the 40 or 50 genders that are out there. Okay? That's Jezebel, my friend. That is the harlot church. All right. I didn't intend to go into any of that, but there you have it. Oh, and that was the last verse. So that was I don't think I'll even try to go into that anymore. We will take questions and comments. Do we have any online? I guess Big Jacob's going to see if there's any online there. Oh, but I will say this before we get to any questions. Man, I'll tell you what, I think the next chapter, or the next 2 chapters, this is just beginning with Jehu. There's going to be some fun stuff. And man, and talking about feminine versus effeminate versus masculine. The one thing the Trump administration is bringing back, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's going to be a bad guy in the long run, and again, I'm not mocking that. Sometimes I get a little excited and it may sound like I'm mocking that. The one thing you cannot deny is he has made masculinity cool again. Our government is masculine again. We went from the Department of Homeland Security, or no, not Homeland Security, Health and Human Services. You guys remember what that thing was? To all of a sudden, somebody who really wants to get back to organic eating and not fill our kids' bodies full of chemicals. He's a dude that lifts weights, talking about Kennedy. He's a masculine man, right? And then you get the new Secretary of Defense. Everything that guy has done is masculine. Tough. You know, somebody say, but Pastor Ben, you're talking too masculine. You don't like being safe? Because you know what? Effeminate men, what do they bring a society? They bring you hard times. They're the kind of men that are so slippery, slimy, that they'll stab people in the back and everything falls apart under those kinds of effeminate leaders. But masculine men, they might offend you at times, but what are they doing? They're actually keeping you safe. They're trying to protect you from predators. They're not trying to make peace. Remember, going back to, I'm still carrying this sermon on. I can't stop. But remember, Jehu, effeminate men make peace with evil forces. Masculine men like Jehu says, what peace? I'm not making peace with you guys. You know, we got Trump. He'll actually call people out in his conference. Some of these wicked doers trying to set traps for him and that work for CNN or whatever. And he'll just say it right to them. You're a despicable person. You're a wicked person. You're a disgusting human being. And he's right. But he's like how many people have the courage to say that? I know I have a hard time if I was just talking to somebody one-on-one. I knew the person was a disgusting human being, just to look at him in the face and say, you're a disgusting human being. I mean, it takes a special breed to do that, a special kind of man. And there we have it. So I'm loving all this masculine stuff. Okay. We're done with feminine stuff, effeminate stuff. Okay. We love feminine, true godly feminine stuff, right? But we don't want a effeminate spirit ruling over every aspect of our life. Hey, I'm cool with a balance of feminine and masculine balancing each other out, a husband and a wife, right? Because I'm kind of probably need to be leveled out once in a while because I might be overboard masculine at times. And my wife can, hopefully feminize me to the point where I'm at least balanced. I'm not, a lion out there trying to devour people. Okay. All right. Anyways, questions or comments? I'll take them now. Sorry.
Creed McKay says, most pastors would not speak of this, and I appreciate that you are speaking about this. Kind of touching on like what you're talking about with the fake pastors.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. We will we will continue to do our best in doing that.
Deanne says, the men of Canada are very feminine.
The men of Canada. Yeah. Effeminate Canada, right? Yeah, Europe the same way, right? What's happening to those countries? They're getting overrun by radical Islamic extremists or whatever, you name it, what kind of group. Effeminate men never protect a country or a house. All right. Well, like I said, it's going to be exciting. I'm pumped to get to the next chapter with Jehu. We're going to definitely cover that because I feel like it is where we are at today. The modern day Jehus are cleaning house. They're enjoying it. They're having a good.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the Tithes and
Got canceled. Oh, now I'm back. Okay. All right. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited to get to the next chapter, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. Until then, stay in His Word every single day so that you can be a Christian overcomer. God bless.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of His terrible sword. His truth is marching